In order for people to buy a house, one of the requirements before closing on the property is you need to obtain homeowners insurance if you're getting a mortgage, which is most people who buy a home. And in the past, that was never one of the hang-ups in closing. That was never one of the things that you got to the closing table or a couple days before closing and said, you know what? I just couldn't get insurance and that's why we couldn't close this deal. But guess what? That is happening to more and more people right now as it becomes harder to insure different properties across the country. And according to some new data out of California, which I wish I had more data on other places, but this one just happens to be out of California here, they say about 1 in 7 California real estate agents had a home sale fall through recently due to difficulty finding insurance in the past year, which is nearly double the figure from 2023. So in just 1 year, it got twice as hard to get homeowners insurance in the state of California, guys. And 1 in 7 is pretty significant. That's a little over 14% of people that can't get homeowners insurance on a house they try to buy, guys. Now, what does that number look like in a state like Florida or in Texas or in other places where it's harder and harder to get insurance on properties? Now, just over this past summer, the California Association of Realtors, they actually added a specific insurance contingency to their home sale template, which gives buyers the option to take back their offer or renegotiate if they aren't able to find an acceptable insurance policy. Now, so far, real estate agents are saying that this hasn't been a big enough problem to impact property values in these areas where it's hard to get insurance, but I'm sure that's coming next. And I believe one of the only reasons it probably hasn't had a major impact is because it's a California story, right? In California, in most areas, there's still not a whole lot of inventory for sale, guys, because here in California, you have a massive incentive to hang on to your property and even try to pass it down from generation to generation due to the laws that exist under Proposition 13 here, which I'm not going to get into, I've talked about in the past, but a brief summary is that it keeps your property taxes artificially low for however long you own a property. So people here in California don't have nearly as much of an incentive to sell a property as they do in other places. It's much harder to move because you could move to a less expensive house and have a higher mortgage payment because of higher property taxes. You also had 31% of 3,000 realtors who were surveyed here in California said that their most recent buyers had difficulty obtaining insurance when trying to purchase a home, up from about 16% from 2023. So 14% of home sales completely fell apart. They could not obtain insurance. Think about that. And then an additional 31% didn't fall apart, but probably got close to falling apart because of how difficult it was to obtain insurance. So now those new buyers say they were able to close on that property. They get insurance this year, but what about next year and the year after that? Are they going to be able to continue getting insurance from now on? I don't know. And even if they can continue getting insurance from now on, are they going to be able to afford the new insurance premiums? Is another thing you have to ask yourself. 45% of buyers that ran into this issue said that the issue with getting insurance is that it was too expensive, and another 30% faced issues with obtaining a quote at all. They couldn't even get a quote. Take a look at this graph here of California homebuyers who had problems finding insurance from 2023 to 2024. No matter where you live throughout the state, whether it's downtown in a city, outside of a downtown, in the suburbs, rural, vacation second home, all property types are seeing an increase in difficulty obtaining insurance. And like I said, I don't have this data on any other state, so if you do, feel free to email it over to me. But I know that California and Florida are not the only states that are having trouble with homeowners insurance right now. I've seen other people write into me telling me they're seeing problems in Colorado. They have problems in places like Oklahoma and even in Missouri, places you wouldn't expect to have problems with homeowners insurance. And something that everybody needs to think about is the harder it becomes to obtain insurance on a property, or the more unaffordable that insurance becomes and the fewer options that are available, that eventually it is going to affect the value of the property. And this might sound like a relief so far that this isn't happening to you, but nobody's immune from this problem, guys, because insurance companies as a whole right now are having a difficult time trying to figure out how to spread their risk and mitigate their loss houses. In fact, earlier this month, you had several cities and counties here in California call out to Gavin Newsom, the governor here, saying that we need to declare this insurance issue a state emergency. They're saying, listen, we already have a lack of affordable housing in the state. This can make it even worse because it can make some homes unsellable, essentially, and reduce the inventory even further here. But I don't really see it that way as a real estate agent. The way I see it is that the home won't be unsellable. It'll just be worth significantly less because the only people who are going to be buying that house are people that can afford to pay cash for it. That's already what we're seeing happen in Florida for people that can't get insurance on properties there. It doesn't remove the property from the market indefinitely. It materially changes the value of that home, and now it's worth significantly less because only cash buyers can purchase it. It's that simple. This isn't really an affordable housing issue, guys. If anything, it makes housing more affordable because these homes are going to be worth less, and when they start transacting for less, then it will lower the value of the surrounding homes because of the comparable sales. Now, when we switch gears over to property taxes, we all know that a lot of people have seen some major increases in property taxes over the past few years. And even though many of these increases in property taxes are fraudulent, they're happening anyways. And by the way, if you want to know more about that, go back on my channel. I'll put a link for this video down in the description below, and watch the video I did with Mitch Vexler. That will give you some good insight into this. Also, if you're somebody who wants to protest your property taxes, I'm leaving a link in my description permanently for a company that sponsored the channel a few weeks back called Ownwell. And this video is not sponsored, but they can help you get your property taxes lowered. It's something that's free to sign up for, and you only pay if they actually are able to lower your bills. You really have nothing to lose if you're interested in protesting your property taxes every year moving forward. I highly suggest signing up with them, and the link for that is down below. But according to a recent report from Redfin, 3 of the top 5 major housing markets with the largest jumps in property tax bills since 2019 are in Florida. Surprise, surprise. I'm not really surprised at all to hear that. They say that in Jacksonville, people have seen about a 60% increase in the median monthly property tax bill. In Tampa, it's been a 57% increase, and in Miami, it's been a 48% increase. And as somebody who's paying property taxes in Miami, I can confirm that yes, this is the case. But interestingly enough, the largest property tax increases were not in Florida when you look at this as a nationwide problem. In fact, Indianapolis, Indiana, they ranked first and saw their property tax bills climb 67% between 2019 and now. And Atlanta, Georgia is right behind them at a 66% increase. The nationwide average, people have seen about a 30% jump in their property tax bills since 2019, guys. And this is all just because property values have been going up. That's it. You know, the property's worth more, we're going to charge you more. That's all. There's this talk about the Harris campaign, and they want to tax unrealized gains on people potentially in the future. Well, what do you think an increase in property taxes is? When you see your property taxes go up due to an increase in your property value, that's a tax on unrealized gains. You know, you're not selling the house, you're not benefiting in any way from that house being more valuable unless you sell it or borrow all the money out against it, guys. That's the only way that your property value going up benefits you, the homeowner. So the real benefit is to the property tax collector, because now they can charge you more money and say it's because your house is worth more, and that's supposed to justify the increase. Right now, they say the median nationwide property tax bill monthly is $250 a month, and in Miami it's at $367 a month. And I can tell you that mine is significantly higher than that. If you're to break it down, it's probably more like $700 a month. Now, as much as we also like to complain about the property taxes being high in Florida, it's still cheaper than, like, say if I were to move here to California, then not only paying property taxes on a property I buy here, but also paying a hefty state income tax. Okay, so when you move to a state like Florida, you can't complain too much about the higher property tax bill because there's no state income taxes. And obviously, the more money you earn, then the more that makes sense for you and the more money you're saving by moving to a state like Florida. But recognize that even with the massive increase in property taxes that we have seen, and me personally, guys, it is still far cheaper for me to remain a Florida resident than to move to a state like California and pay property taxes and pay state income taxes and pay higher taxes on everything else that you buy here. So we like to complain about it, but in reality, the financial situation is still far better in Florida than like a place like here in California. In fact, that's the #1 reason that I won't move here. Different cities in Texas like Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, property taxes make up about 20% of the median monthly housing payments for folks over there. And this is exactly the point I was just making here. Like Illinois, New York, and New Jersey are all places that have higher property taxes than a state like Florida, guys. So even though Florida's property taxes are expensive, you're still paying more in Illinois, New York, and New Jersey, which are all high tax states. They tax your income. They tax your property that you own. They tax everything that you buy. They have higher gas taxes. For example, take a look at this. Homeowners in Long Island, New York, they pay a median monthly property tax bill of $905 in property taxes, compared to the nationwide average of $250 and $367 average in Miami. So something that everybody needs to keep in mind, like if you are planning on moving to a state that has no state income taxes because you don't want to pay that, definitely take a look at what your potential property taxes would be. But if you own a home where you live right now in a state that does charge state income taxes, then there's a good chance, depending on your income, that you'll still be saving money even if you have a higher property tax bill. But of course, the less money you make, then the less that's likely to be true, because people that don't make a lot of money aren't paying a lot of money in state income taxes. So my rule of thumb for this would be the more money that you make, then the more likely it's going to be worth it to move to a no income tax state and pay a slightly higher property tax bill. But you also have states like Tennessee and Nevada. Those are also states without state income taxes. And surprisingly enough, Las Vegas was one of the 2 housing markets where monthly property tax bills actually went down from 2019, with the average decline about 4.3%. I don't even know how that's possible, but I'm really happy for the people in Vegas. But if you live in Vegas and the opposite is true for you, just let us all know in the comments. Nashville, Tennessee also saw a 30% jump in property taxes since 2019, but the median monthly property tax bill is still $152 even with that increase, which is far below even the national median average. Washington State, they're another state that has no state income taxes, and Seattle homeowners saw about a 40% increase in the size of their monthly property tax payments since 2019, which is an average about $545 monthly. But you know what, guys? As much as I hate paying property taxes, I will gladly pay that bill over forking over a massive amount of your income, which is kind of a disincentive to do well. You know, like if you live in a state that takes your income tax, then essentially the more you make, the more they take, just like the federal government. You know, we already have to pay a crazy amount of money in income taxes to the federal government. You can't get around that, but at least you can escape it from the state government. And if the worst thing is you have to pay slightly higher property taxes than a state that doesn't charge that, so what, is what I say. There was a survey recently from different generations talking to people about how well they're doing today versus how well they were doing 4 years ago, which is interesting. And get this, 68.7% of millennials and Gen Z homeowners say they're better off financially than they were 4 years ago. But the reason they're bringing this up is not just because of the election, but also because they're comparing homeowners to renters. So millennial and Gen Z renters, only 52.2% of them say that they're financially better off than they were 4 years ago. So that's a 16% discrepancy in the amount of people saying that they're doing better now financially. Well, what does that even mean, guys? And I'm not saying this is the case for everybody, but a lot of Gen Zers and millennials that are homeowners got a boost from mom and dad, or the likes thereof. You know, somebody helped them in a lot of cases to enter the housing market, because most of them couldn't afford to do it on their own. I know that's not everybody. It wasn't me. Nobody helped me buy my place. I did it all on my own. My wife and I did it together. But let's face it, a large chunk of these kids had help. So of course you're going to be doing better off financially if you got a free gift from somebody to help you buy a home versus someone who's stuck renting because they don't have a wealthy family, or they're just not doing as good in life. And the thing I hate about these type of surveys is they use this data to try and pin people up against the wall and say, well, look, you see, 16% more of people in this generation say they're doing better financially now 4 years later because they're homeowners. Well, I don't think it's just because they're homeowners. That could be part of it. But let's think about it. Even if those people didn't get any help, right? Nobody helped them buy a home. They didn't have any family help, no free money, right? They did it all by themselves. Then the issue is that those people are just doing well, right? They are actually successful in life. They have a very good job. They have good financial habits. They're able to save money, stack away cash, make the right investments. And they also happen to be homeowners because people who are smart with money tend to be able to afford a home over someone who's not smart with money. Because let's face it, buying a house costs a lot of money. So this shouldn't really come as a big surprise, but this is like a study from the real estate industry, of course, because the idea is the better we make it look to be a homeowner, then the more houses we can sell. It's pretty simple. Interestingly enough, they say that a lot of the baby boomers report being worse off than 4 years ago. According to this same study, 38.2% of baby boomers who are homeowners say they're worse off financially than they were 4 years ago, compared to 40.2% of baby boomer renters. So it's kind of tied neck and neck. And I think the reason for that is twofold. Number one, a lot of baby boomers are in retirement or entering retirement, living on some sort of a fixed income. And at the same time, you're seeing all of their expenses rise and outpace that fixed income. So it doesn't really matter if you're renting or owning your home, because the expenses for both are rising at a pace that they can't really afford. So in that case, if you ask me, it doesn't really matter if you're a renter or a homeowner, because if you're a homeowner and you live in one of these places where the property taxes have shot up substantially, like we just talked about, who cares? It's just like being a renter that just got their rent increased. What's the difference? Or like the insurance situation we were talking about earlier. That's something also completely out of your control. If your house isn't paid off and you're a homeowner, you're forced to have insurance. Or maybe it is paid off, but you don't have the guts to go without insurance and you still want to have it, then you're forced to continue paying those premiums no matter what they go up to. That's the situation, guys. It's just like getting your rent increased. And just so you know, I didn't forget about Gen Xers. 42.6% of Gen X homeowners say they're doing better than 4 years ago, compared to 38.8% of Gen X renters. So not a huge gap. The biggest gap is with the youngest age group of homeowners versus renters, which also makes more sense too, guys, because let's face it, the younger you are, the less time you've had to make alternative investments, because some people just prefer to rent over own a home for a multitude of different reasons. And so the older you are, the more time you've had to build up wealth in another area of your life besides just having it all tied up into your home. And I think a lot of these younger people that were surveyed with this say that they're doing better off financially too, maybe because they're not actually doing better off financially. It's just that they see that the value of their home has risen tremendously if they bought it, 3 or 4 years ago. And they're like, wow, look at me, I'm rich, I have $200,000 in equity in this house. If I could sell it right now, I could just take that $200K. And that's what we call the wealth effect. People feel richer than they really are because they have assets that are worth a lot of money if they were to sell it, but you don't ever actually get to realize that gain until that asset is actually sold. I saw this today too, which I thought was very crazy, because everybody's been using the credit card like gangbusters right now in order to keep up with the cost of living, and we see the credit card debt continue to rise quarter after quarter to all-time highs in the United States. But even though that's happening, Visa just announced that they're going to lay off about 1,400 employees and contractors by the end of the year. And keep in mind, guys, we're entering the holiday season. This is basically the holidays already. We're on the precipice of November now, and all these layoffs are going to be happening during the holidays. How sad is that? But this is just one of many companies that are going to be laying people off into the end of the year, and people will lose jobs. In fact, I think a lot of these companies are going to perform these layoffs sooner than later, because most of them don't really have the heart to lay people off like, the week of Christmas or the week of New Year's or something. So they're probably going to do it before that. They say about 1,000 of the Job cuts are going to eliminate technology positions, while most of the rest of them will focus on merchant sales and global digital partnership roles. Visa has over 30,000 employees, and some of the job cuts will be contractors on its engineering team. You also have Starbucks this week warning a bunch of their remote workers to start complying with the back to office mandates, otherwise they can just, find somewhere else to work. The company said they're going to be instituting an accountability process in January to ensure corporate employees comply with requirements to work in the office 3 days a week. Haven't you noticed the trend here, guys? Like, all of these companies are starting to crack the whip and drop the hammer on their employees right now in the form of layoffs that are going to happen before the end of this year and going into next year. Simultaneously, you have these return to office mandates, which are also designed to make a lot of people quit so they don't have to pay them unemployment. That's basically a layoff. And starting next year, this is all going to be happening. So if this year wasn't bad enough, we can pretty much already see that next year is going to be even worse with all this stuff. And the overall trend that you're seeing is a lot of companies that let people work remotely during the pandemic are all starting to call employees back into the office. In fact, a higher percentage of companies required employees to be in the office 5 days a week in the third quarter of this year versus just the second quarter. Some other big companies that are doing these return to the office mandates are Amazon, UPS, Dell, JP Morgan, Boeing, all of these companies, guys. And that's just to name a few. And one last thing I want to mention here is, I'm sure a lot of people probably noticed this, that this neighborhood I'm walking around is a little bit sketchy looking. It doesn't feel sketchy, but it doesn't look the greatest. Like, you see a lot of, old cars and stuff in the driveways and things just kind of parked around here, and the yard's not being maintained a whole lot. Well, guess what? This neighborhood I'm walking through is Bel Marin Keys here in Novato. And this is an HOA community, guys. I don't know what kind of rules they have or how much these rules are enforced, but clearly just by taking a look around, it doesn't seem like they really enforce a lot of HOA rules here. So like a lot of people that like to buy in an HOA community, they like to do it so that way yards can look like this one here, like nice and trimmed and manicured. But then 2 doors down, you have broken down trucks and the grass that's hasn't been cut basically ever and stuff like that. So I just wanted to point that out, that even in an HOA community that you could see things like this happen sometimes. So if you ever are going to buy a house in an HOA, I strongly suggest that you drive the entire community, guys, because you can drive 1 or 2 streets this way and you won't see as much of that, but on this street, for whatever reason, you see more of it. So if you're going to buy in an HOA, make sure you vet it, along with all the other things I mentioned in this video. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.